Today, March 26, 2026. Yesterday, we were discussing about samadhi concentration. So, we will continue on that topic today. Samadhi, simply translated as concentration. This is one of the universal mental factor that can associate with all kinds of mind. So samadhi concentration, it can associate with any kind of mind, wholesome mind, unwholesome mind, and indeterminate mind. So what is the meaning of samadhi concentration? It is one-pointedness of mind, ekagata. Eka is one, aga is having object. So having one object means when there is concentration, the mind stays on one object. That is the meaning of ekagata, concentration or samadhi. And it is also defined as one-pointedness of mind, and also it is the nature of mind, a nature of the mental factor that can keep the mind and its associated mental factors evenly and rightly on the object. So with the help of samadhi concentration, the mind and other associated mental factors stays calmly, evenly and rightly on the object. So that is the definition of this samadhi or concentration. So it makes the mind and mental factors very stable, very steady, not shaking. So because it is the one of the universal mental concomitant, it can be present in all kinds of mind, unwholesome mind, wholesome mind, and indeterminate mind. Therefore, whenever the unwholesome akusala mind arises, whenever we commit unwholesome deeds, at that time also this samadhi is present. But here we are doing the wholesome deed. So the concentration here is the wholesome concentration, the right concentration. The concentration that comes together with unwholesome mind is wrong concentration. So we can say there are two types of concentration. Mithya samadhi, that is wrong concentration, and samma samadhi, that is right concentration. The concentration that is present in unwholesome mind is wrong concentration, and the concentration that comes together with the wholesome mind is right concentration. So in this practice, bhavana, Vipassanā practice, we develop we develop right concentration, samma samadhi. And this samadhi, because it has a capacity to keep the mind and other associated mental factors calmly, evenly, and rightly on the object that is observed. Therefore, it has the characteristic of non-distraction, non-scattering. Means when there is samadhi, concentration, the mind is not scattered. The mind is not distracted. It keeps the mind undistracted in the object. Means it stabilizes the mind and other mental factors. So the mind is not scattered. And the example is given like piercing a spear in the soft soil. When we pierce a spear on the soft soil, it will not move anywhere. It will just stay on the place where we pierce. And also like dropping down the heavy bag of rice. When we drop down the heavy bag of rice, it will not roll down to other places. It will just stay on the place where we drop it down. So when samadhi is there, the mind just stays on the object very steadily. So that is the characteristic of samadhi concentration. And this concentration can unify the other mental concomitants, other mental factors. And because of that, the mind will not spread all over. The mind will not be scattered. It will not spread out all over. It will just stay on the object. It brings all other dhammas arising together with it, concentration on the object. So it destroys the scatteredness, and that is the function of samadhi. So when there is samadhi, we feel that the mind is not scattered, the mind is just gathered on the object, just calm and collected on the object. That is the function of concentration, samadhi. And when we develop samadhi by observing every presently arising objects, we come to experience the calmness and peacefulness in the mind. We feel very calm, very peaceful, very quiet. That is the manifestation of samadhi. When samadhi develops, we feel very, very quiet, very peaceful, very calm. And there is no wavering at all. There is no wavering at all. And the mind is very steady on the object. So the calmness, the peacefulness we experience because of the strong concentration we develop in the practice. But here we have to be careful that only the calmness and the peacefulness we experience because of the strong concentration is the true. We really experiencing it, and that is correct, that is right. But sometimes we might be feeling calmness not because of the concentration, but sometimes we feel very calm because we are not applying enough effort. Sometimes we just feel sleepy, but we don't know that. We think that, oh, I'm observing the objects, but actually not. We observe the object for a few times, but more time we may be drifted away on the imagination or somewhere, or because of the sleepy feeling also, we feel very calm, very quiet. And that type of quiet and calm feeling is not because of this right concentration. So if we really develop this right concentration, our mind becomes very calm and quiet, and at the meantime, we know the nature of the objects. We see the objects clearly. We come to know about that object observed clearly. It is said that samahito bhikkhave yatha bhutang pajanati. When the mind is calm and collected on the object, then he will know, he will discern the nature of object as it is. So if we do not know what object that we are noting, how was the object, but we just feel calm and peaceful, then that might be not because of the right concentration. So we have to be careful of that point, because sometimes when we do not have any kind of painful sensations, when we do not have any other very obvious physical sensations in the body, we have very few objects. Maybe some are focusing on the in-breath and out-breath, just trying to keep the mind calmly on the nostrils, noting the in-breath and out-breath. But many times they do not know about that in-breath and out-breath, but they just feel calm and peaceful. Sometimes they don't know what was the nature they are experiencing at that time. Sometimes they do not know, but they would say that, oh, it's so peaceful, so calm. Then what did you know? When we ask them, they don't know anything. So we should be very careful of that thing. So here, when we, in the practice, especially now we are doing Vipassanā practice, we are noting various objects arising in the present moment, one after another. But when we develop concentration, we still feel very calm and quiet, though we are noting many objects, one after another. So we experience that nature of concentration, and that is the manifestation. And also we feel the mind is very steady, very tranquil. Citta thiti, the mind is very steady. That is also another manifestation of this concentration, samadhi. And this type of samadhi, we the calmness, we feel the mind is very stable. That is the nature of samadhi we experience. So when the mind is very stable, very calm, at that time there is no impurities. All the impurities are settled down. We feel like that. It's like muddy water. The bucket of muddy water, if we just keep that bucket somewhere without touching, without moving it, all the impurities, impediments, it settle down and we get the clear water on top. So too, when we develop this concentration, samadhi, then we feel very calm, quiet, and the mind becomes very clear at that time. Means there is no impurities in the mind. The mind is very clear and clean, and so we see the objects very distinctly. So that type of nature the concentration has. So whenever there is concentration, the mind will not be scattered, the mind will not be dispersed. It will be just focused in the object. So that is the nature of concentration. And there are different kinds of concentration mentioned in the text. And yesterday we talked about this different concentration briefly. Mainly 3 kinds of concentration are mentioned in the text. The upachara samadhi, access concentration or neighborhood concentration, and appana samadhi, absorption concentration, and the karnika samadhi, that is momentary concentration. And the first 2, this upachara samadhi and appana samadhi, access concentration and absorption concentration, these 2 concentrations are cultivated in samatha practice, samatha meditation. And in samatha meditation, we take only one object. We choose only one object, whether it is in-breath and out-breath, or we choose one object in doing metta bhavana or karuna bhavana, or we choose one object as a kasina, like art or water or air, and so on. So in samatha practice, we do not need to care about anything else. We just try to keep that mind fixed on one object of tranquility meditation. And that object is not the ultimate dhamma, that is the concept. So conceptual object we take in samatha practice, and we try to fix this mind on that object. We don't care about anything else. Of course, at the beginning, it is not easy. Many times the mind wanders here and there, but we don't need to note that wandering. We don't need to note thinking or imagining. We just need to bring the mind back to that object of tranquility meditation. And that way we develop concentration. And when we develop that concentration, it becomes a bit powerful that it can keep the hindrances away. The hindrances will not arise. That concentration can suppress the hindrances for certain time. And when that concentration develop further, then we will attain absorption jhana. So that type of concentration we gain in samatha practice. Therefore, our Sayadaw give the name, mention this concentration as a fixed concentration. This jhana concentration, access concentration and absorption concentration as a fixed concentration or continuous concentration. It just fixed on one object. But now we are doing Vipassanā meditation. We have many objects. We have to note the most obvious objects. When rising, falling is obvious, we try to focus on that rising, falling, noting it continuously. When other secondary objects become predominant, then we note those secondary objects as long as they are predominant to us. And many times there are thoughts arising, we note those thoughts. Many times the mind wanders, we note that wandering mind. So we have many objects in this Vipassana practice. So we cannot fix our mind in just one object. We cannot fix the mind in just one object. The noting mind is moving from one object to another object. The noting mind is moving. So the concentration we gain, we develop in this Vipassana practice is not like the concentration we gain in samatha practice. It is different from that samatha concentration. So as we are noting the objects, different objects, moment by moment, one moment after another, and we are developing that concentration also moment by moment. So every moment of noting, we develop one concentration. And that type of concentration is called Karnika Samadhi, momentary concentration. Therefore, our Sayadaw said, give the name for this concentration as a moving concentration. It is concentration. The definition of concentration is it stabilizes the mind, it stays on the object. But here in Vipassana practice, we have many objects, but it still can stabilize the mind, but not in just one object. In various objects, different objects noted at that time. So the noting mind is moving from one object to another object. And that is the concentration we gain in noting various objects is moving concentration. So Kanika Samadhi, momentary concentration, is moving concentration. Note that it is not fixed on only one object. Therefore, when we do this Vipassana meditation, though we are able to note the objects occurring in the present moment at one after another, we still feel that, oh, there is no concentration developed. The mind is so busy. The mind is so busy. There is no concentration, no calmness. No, the mind is not quiet. Mind is very busy. And we feel that, oh, I could not develop concentration. I was practicing for how many days, but I still did not develop the strong concentration. We think that way because the concentration we develop here, we produced here is, we cultivate here is the momentary concentration. Each time we note the object, we got that momentary concentration. Therefore, when this momentary concentration we develop, because it developed moment by moment, we feel there is no concentration developed, but actually there is. What we need to do is we need to make it continuous. We need to make it continuous. The concentration here we develop is just stays one moment. It stabilizes the mind just for one moment. But if we are able to make that type of concentration continuously, one after another, then it becomes very powerful. It becomes very strong. So in order to gain that type of concentration, what we need to do is we need to observe the presently arising objects continuously so that we will have this momentary concentration, but powerful one, the strong one. And this momentary concentration is also called Vipassanā concentration, Vipassanā samadhi, because we gain this concentration by practicing this Vipassanā meditation. And this Vipassanā concentration or momentary concentration, we gain also sometimes we can lose that when we are not mindful, when the conditions are not favorable, then we can lose. We are bound to lose that type of momentary concentration. But when we attain the highest path and fusion knowledge, the concentration, this Vipassanā concentration will never be destroyed. So we need to develop this type of concentration, and when we are able to develop this concentration moment by moment, it becomes very powerful, and that powerful momentary concentration also has the capacity to suppress the mental defilements. It can suppress mental defilements when it becomes powerful, when it becomes very continuous. Therefore, the continuous observation is needed all the time. If we could develop that momentary concentration consistently, then that concentration can last for a long time. That concentration can last uninterrupted for a long time, and it becomes very powerful. It can suppress the mental defilements. Then we will gain the purification of mind. Our mind will be purified from those unwholesome dhammas. And only when the mind is purified, then we see the true nature of the physical and mental phenomena. And this type of momentary concentration can again classified into three levels. Can classified into three levels. It is concentration, but different levels, three different levels. The first one is very weak concentration, very weak concentration. At the beginning of the practice, we put effort and aim the object. We develop concentration moment by moment, and when keep on noting the objects consistently that way, we keep on noting the objects, we slowly come to know the nature of the phenomena, the physical and mental phenomena, because we develop concentration to certain level, and we come to see the mind and matter. We come to know the mind and matter distinctly. We can distinguish the mind and matter. As we discussed yesterday, there we are noting rising movement. We can see the nature of rising movement, and at the same time, we also see this noting mind. The noting mind and the rising movement are two different things. In noting falling, the noting mind and the falling movement are two different things. In noting pain, noting mind and the painful object are two different things. They are not one. So we can differentiate the noting mind and the object because we develop momentary concentration to some extent. So that type of concentration is a weak concentration. When we are able to see the mental and physical phenomena, observing the objects constantly, that concentration we develop here is weak momentary concentration, not very strong yet. It is still weak, but we still able to see the nature of mind and matter. And again, we also come to see the nature of cause and effect relation of this mind and matter, how this mind and matter are related as cause and effect. The mind causes matter, and the matter causes mind. The mind causes mind, and the matter also causes matter. We come to know the relation of this mind and matter, how this mind and matter are related in terms of cause and effect. And we are able to see this because of that momentary concentration. If we do not have this momentary concentration, we won't be able to see the cause and effect relation of this mind and matter. That is also the insight. Knowing the mind and matter distinctly is also the insight. And discerning the cause and effect relation of this mind and matter is also the another insight. And again, when we keep on observing the objects, we come to understand the impermanent nature, the suffering nature, and the non-self nature. the object, it arises and it stays for a while and it disappears. We haven't seen the quick arising and passing away yet, but we see that the object arises and it stays there for a while. We are noting that object and later it disappears. So we come to see that impermanent nature. And we also contemplate that impermanent characteristics of that object. So that is also one insight. And at a time also, the concentration we gain here is not very strong enough yet. So that concentration, that momentary concentration, is the weak momentary concentration. But when we continuously note the objects, we keep on practicing again, then later we may develop the intermediate level of concentration, stronger than the first momentary concentration, weak momentary concentration. At that time, we can discern the very quick arising and passing away nature of the objects. We can see that the objects, how quickly they appear and disappear. The swift appearance and disappearance of the objects we will be able to discern. That is the one insight. And at that time, our momentary concentration is of the intermediate level. And then again, if we continue practicing, noting every arising objects, whatever present, whatever obvious at that time, we will gain the advanced level of concentration, very advanced level of momentary concentration. It is momentary concentration, but strong, very good, very strong advanced level of momentary concentration, and we come to see the only disappearance of the objects. We did not see its appearance, but we see only disappearance. So that type of momentary concentration is the advanced level of momentary concentration. So this level of concentration, it begins with the insight on delusion. So when we say it's a momentary concentration, it occurs only for a moment. It seems very weak. Yes, it is very weak. If we see for a moment, if we gain just for a moment, it is very weak. But if we are able to make it continuous, if this concentration flows like a current, then it becomes very, very strong. It becomes very, very strong. And this type of strong momentary concentration cannot be destroyed very easily because it is very strong. So it is like a strong rope. The rope is made up of many, many fibers. Every individual fiber, we can break it very easily. But when we put all fibers together to make a strong rope, we cannot break, we cannot destroy that rope easily. So too, the momentary concentration, if it occurs just for a moment, it seems very weak. It can be destroyed very easily. But when we collect that momentary concentration, one after another continuously, it becomes very, very strong. So this type of strong momentary concentration is compared with those jhana concentration, those access concentration and absorption concentration. It becomes very strong. The mind in jhana concentration, the mind, that concentration can keep the mind fixed on the one object. This momentary concentration too, when it becomes very, very strong, it can keep the mind on the objects. It can fix the mind on the objects. But here, not one object, and different objects. Though we are noting many different objects, we feel that the mind is very, very stable. The mind, noting mind, is very stable, very calm. Feeling like we are doing nothing, we are not moving. The mind is not shaking. It's very calm, very stable, very steady, though moving, though noting one object after another. And we have to develop that type of concentration. That type of momentary concentration can keep this mind, the Vipassanā mind, the meditative, this Vipassanā mind, very steady on the object observed. So in order to have that type of steady mind, we need to note the objects, presently arising objects. We should not leave this mind freely on the external objects. Here, the external objects means the thoughts, the imaginations, or fantasies, or planning. So these types of objects are external objects. We should not let the mind freely on those external objects. We should note the internal objects. We should try to keep our mind inside. We should note the internal objects. The internal objects means the objects arising at that moment, the physical object and the mental object. We are not letting the mind freely move outside in the sensual objects, the sensual pleasures. We are trying to be mindful of everything, every object. So if we can able to keep our mind internally observing the objects one after another, then we will be able to develop this type of strong Vipassanā momentary concentration. That concentration can keep this noting mind very steady on the object, and the mind, and that concentration can suppress the sensual, the defilements, the sensual pleasures, the defilements. So the mind will be very pure and clean. Then we will have a chitta visuddhi, the purification of the mind. So in the discourse on ant hill, the teacher asks his student to dispel a strainer, yeah, a filter, to dispel a filter. And that strainer resembles hindrances. So the Buddha said the meaning of this throwing away the strainer is to throw away the defilements, to dispel the defilements. So we will be able to dispel defilements when we cultivate and develop this strong momentary concentration. Then we will have a chitta visuddhi. So dispelling defilements is to gain the chitta visuddhi, pure mind, to purify the mind. So when the mind is purified, we will be able to see, we will be able to distinguish the mind and matter. We will be able to discern the cause and effect relation of this mind and matter, and we will be able to discern or contemplate the three characteristics of mind and matter. That means we will be able to develop insight. That is the meaning of dispelling or throwing away the strainer in the discourse of on ant hill. And we will continue this talk tomorrow. That's all for today.